Are you having trouble with your drivetrain? Can't make the shifts? Chains jumping? It's going all over the place. It just doesn't feel as crisp as you would like. Well, I got some answers for you today. I've had a lot of experience with these bikes and trying to figure out what was wrong with them. So we're going to go over that today. Where I like to start is to see if any of the components have worn, if there's too much wear on them. And then the first place that I start is the big chain ring. Let's take a look. The problem with these components wearing is because it's like watching grass grow. You don't really see it because it's happening over time. And I'm getting my gloves on here because I don't want to get my sissy hands dirty. Let me show you two chain rings. I got one that's virtually brand new that I took off my TT bike. And I have another one that's like worn down to nothing. And what happens, and I've had this happen to me 3 or 4 times. And the first time it happened is really interesting. Is I put a new chain on, which I let go I should have changed this chain months ago, but I let it go. I put a new chain on, and every time I gave the bike power, out of the saddle, stood up, any type of sprint, the chain would jump off the big chain ring. Every time. That's a surefire way that your big chain ring's gone. And then the first thing, if it happens, this is what you look for. It's a lot easier if you have a newer chain ring to compare it to, because once you see them side by side, you're like, oh wow, that's a big difference. Let's take a look at that now. So I got this guy here that is absolutely worn to nothing. How the teeth are like, they're very pointy. They look like shark teeth almost. Let's see if we could find out. That one's really bad there. We compare that to a new one, and you can really see the difference here. These teeth are nice and square. Well, these teeth are really pointy, crazy pointy. So as you can see, these two chain rings, this one, anytime I gave it power, I gave this guy power, that was it. The chain was jumping off the front. Especially if you put a new chain on, because it's not fitting in these grooves the same way the old chain was, which is really odd. But it's important that you guys see this. I really want to make sure you can see the difference in the teeth. I think that's a much better angle there. First thing you do is look at your chain ring. If it looks like that, you go buy a new one. Then you check your chain. You get this little chain checker guy. You put these two little tabs in the chain. And then once it's in the chain, you press on this. And then as it goes up, and then as it says here, between 25 and 5, good chain, anything over 0.5, you need a new chain. And the key with that is not to press it too hard, because you can really crank it and stretch out the chain. You don't want to do that. And then if you need a new chain, you replace the chain. Very important. I was so lazy with it. I just didn't change it. I didn't think it was that important. And then my parts were just wearing down like crazy. I couldn't believe it. So now I change the chain every 3,000 kilometers. I do it without fail. They recommend you change the cassette every 3 chains, 2 to 3 chains, something like that. That's a lot of cassettes you're buying. And what's also difficult with the cassettes is that you can't tell how they wear. Like, I've looked everywhere online how to test your cassette to see how worn it is. There's nothing out there. There's not a way to do it. But what I found is the same thing happens on the front that happens on the back. When my cassette wears out, my cassette kept jumping in the 11. I was in the 11 and it would jump. And I'm like, this is weird. Like, why is this happening? I screwed with the bike. I just kept tinkering with it. And then I went out and bought a new cassette and it stopped. So check your parts. Check your front chain ring. If it looks like that, you need a new one. And depending on which one you have, you're going to be spending a lot of money, unless you have this SRAM one here. I think these guys are only like 55 bucks. You can see it right here. And you can see this one's still in good condition. Chain ring, you check the cassette, you check the chain. If you haven't changed the cassette in a while, you might as well get a new cassette and a new chain at the same time. Once you feel that your parts are good and you don't have any issues with the parts and it's an issue with the bike, then we start looking at the bike. I have my winter bike here. It's been sitting on the trainer. The weather's supposed to be good tomorrow, so I'm going to make sure it's working. I'm going to show you how I do that and then hopefully help you guys out if you got any issues. Let's get over the bike. I'll show you how I do this stuff. Okay, so I like to start at the front derailleur, and you're going to need a 2mm Allen key. And what I do is I put it in big ring and then all the way down into little ring. Take a look at the alignment of the derailleur, the front derailleur. between here and there. How much space is on either side of the derailleur to the chain. And then I shift all the way up to the top of the cassette. And what I'm really looking for here is to make sure that it's not rubbing. And you can see there's just a little bit of space between there, which is perfect. So while I'm in the big ring at the top of the cassette, easiest gear, I drop it down into little ring. And what I'm looking for, as you can see here, is to make sure there's space between the chain and the inner side of the derailleur right there, which there is. What I do then is shift all the way down to the bottom and then make sure there's enough space on this side. So basically what I'm doing is I'm looking at both ends of the range of the derailleur. I go to the easiest gear little ring, easiest gear big ring, and then vice versa, and then make sure that we're centered. And you do that by adjusting these two screws. Hold on. Might be easier if I sit down here. This screw right here, I find you don't need to adjust. The new model, Dura-Ace and Ultegra, doesn't have this screw. They only have this guy right in there, that little guy. Just want to make sure you can see it right here. And most of your adjustments come from that little screw right there. Also, and that's very important, and this screw's almost impossible to see, all the way in the back there, is it changes the pitch of your derailleur. So it's a little, see how it's turning as it comes out? And what you want to do is make sure that your derailleur is lined up with your chainring, because sometimes you can put it on and say it's all out of whack like that. See how it's not straight? So your screwdriver is all the way right back in there. And as you turn it, you see that sticking out. And so what that does, as you turn it in, it kicks out the derailleur like this, or if you loosen it, it kicks the derailleur like that. And that's what makes this part straight. Once we have the front derailleur set up, and right now my front derailleur is looking good, I move to the rear derailleur. I've never really had to worry too much about the high and limit screws. I've had some issues where the chain has gone off into the spokes and then where it has hit the frame. So it's the bottom screw right here, and hopefully you guys can see this. And all you want to do is soon as you turn it in, as soon as you feel a little tension, give it 1/8 of a turn and then back it off. What this is stopping it from doing is kicking it into the spokes. So I'm set pretty good right there. And also what we want to do at this time is set the B tension screw. And that's this screw right here. And what that does is it sets the distance between your chain and your derailleur. As I loosen it off, it makes the chain tighter to the cassette. As I tighten it, you can see here, it pulls the chain away from the cassette. We want it about there, just where this tooth is just clearing the chain. So we want it a little bit less right there. That looks perfect. So we have just a little bit of clearance between that last tooth and the chain for when the chain kicks out. And this is very, very important. This B tension screw, I would definitely pay attention to it and make sure that this is set. It will definitely help the quality of your shifts. You want to make sure you do this B tension screw while you're in little ring. And you're in the easiest gear on the rear. So let's kick her up into big ring, and we're gonna get into the 11. This is high, because I guess it's the high gear. And as you tighten it in, it's gonna pull. I wanna make sure you guys can see that. As we tighten this high limit screw, it's gonna push the cassette in. And you gotta be really careful about this, because if you bring it too far inbound just like that, you're not going to be able to get yourself into the little ring. So what you want to do, loosen it until it stops coming out, and then just tighten it in a little bit until you feel tension, just to make sure your chain is not going to come out and hit your frame. That's basically it. So those two are set. We want to make adjustments to our DI2, or if you have a barrel adjuster, you have the mechanical, you want to make adjustments to your barrel adjuster. Start in the middle of the cassette in big ring, and you have your junction box here. I have mine on the bar end, and you want to hold it, and you want to hold it for at least wait until it stops flashing, and then you have the red light, just like that. And now you're in adjustment mode. So as I press the up button, it's gonna make my cassette go inbound. As I press the down button, it's gonna make my cassette go down. And every time you press it, it's gonna give you micro adjustments. So let's see if you can see it here. Gives you those micro adjustments in each way. With this, what I like to do is I do a couple things. I listen to make sure that it's running smooth, and you can hear it's not as smooth. And so how I can tell if I need to make adjustments is how fast or slow, and you hear that? How fast or slow it's moving in either direction. So you can feel as I go down, no problem. It has no problem shifting down. But as I go up, you can hear it making those noises. See that? And this part is the most tedious part because you can be going back and forth for a few times. So now you can see there I'm in adjustment mode. No, see right there? Hear that problem I got? So another great way to test this is you just come back and look at it. Look at where the first cog is lined up with where the chain is. And I still think I need to go up a bit on the cassette. So again, we do this, and I didn't press it long enough. Didn't press it long enough again. Okay, there we go. We're gonna try 3 clicks. I adjust it by 3 clicks at a time, sometimes 1 or 2, but never more than 3 at a time, unless I know it's completely jacked up. And I still think it might need to go up a bit because it's coming down pretty quick. So once I feel like it's good in big ring, I put it down into little ring, and I really try and jam it up. I wanna like fast, go slow, really test it. All right, so I'm feeling good about that. Unfortunately, with a lot of this stuff, it's gonna be trial and error, especially when you get nitpicky with it like I am. I'm very, very picky. I want it to shift perfect. So I'm always messing with it. But once it's set, I find you don't really have to mess with it too much. That fine tuning, like I said, the problem that happens is you're gonna test it out on your stand, it's all gonna work, but then once you get out on the road and you put some pressure under the pedals, it's gonna change the way the bike shifts. And that's why there's been so many instances of people taking their bikes to bike shops and then they bring it back the next day because it doesn't work. So what you wanna do is really just take your time with it, have some patience, really try and pinpoint it, listen to what's going on, and then get it back in the shop, make some adjustments. You can also do this on the road. I know that after I get a new bike going or I make a big change on the bike that I'm going to go out and I'm going to take some time on the road to make some adjustments. If you're certain that all of your components are in good working order, you will be able to get the bike to shift properly once you take the time and make some of these adjustments that I've showed you. I hope I covered everything today, guys. I hope you really enjoyed the video. As always, if you liked it, please like it. If you found some value, please consider subscribing, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. I'll see you soon.